The morning it happened was supposed to be ordinary. Maya Thompson stepped out of her small apartment on Briar Avenue, with her work bag on one shoulder and a warm cup of coffee in her hand. The air smelled faintly of rain, and the street was unusually quiet, too quiet, she would later think. She locked her door, walked down the narrow alley that connected to the main street, and mentally rehearsed the presentation she had to deliver that afternoon. Nothing in her mind hinted that the next 60 seconds would shatter her entire routine, her health, and her sense of justice. The first sign that something was wrong was the rumbling. At first, Maya thought it was distant thunder rolling over the city, the kind that hovered 4 hours before finally opening the skies. But the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, sharper, scraping along the pavement like metal dragging against stone. She turned her head. Too late, just in time to see a massive industrial dumpster sliding toward her with terrifying speed. Maya didn't remember screaming. Her body moved on instinct, feet pushing off, shoulders twisting, hands reaching for anything solid, but the alley was narrow, and the dumpster took up nearly the entire width. She felt the harsh impact on her side first, a violent slam that ripped the air from her lungs. Then she was airborne, crashing into a stack of wooden pallets beside the building. Her coffee spilled across the concrete, splashing her hands as the world spun and blurred. The pain hit a second later. Sharp, deep, radiating from her ribs, her hip, her back. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The alley around her tilted like a broken picture frame, and she tasted blood in the back of her throat. Somewhere above her, a man shouted, footsteps pounded. Someone cursed loudly, followed by frantic rustling. Maya forced her eyes open, vision swimming, to see 2 sanitation workers staring at her in horror. One of them, a tall man with trembling hands, kept looking between her and the runaway dumpster as though trying to decide whether to help or flee. The other was already pulling out his phone, but instead of calling emergency services, he barked into the device. The dumpster rolled by. It hit somebody. No. I don't know how bad, just get down here. Maya wanted to scream at him to call an ambulance, to get help immediately, but her voice was a choked whisper. Pain clamped around her chest like a vice. Every attempt to inhale felt like knives pushing into her bones. Minutes felt like hours before another voice cut through, the Hazaa woman this time, stern and demanding. Why didn't either of you call 911 yet? Move. She's hurt. Then Kuans touched Maya's cheek, checking her pulse, brushing hair away from her eyes. Stay with me. Don't move. Help is coming. When the paramedics arrived, the world blurred into flashing lights, clipped instructions, and the metallic smell of stretchers. Someone fitted a brace around her neck. Another lifted her gently, every motion sending a new wave of agony rolling through her spine. She heard the words possible fractures, internal injury, observe breathing, but they drifted in and out like distant echoes. The ride to the hospital was a fog of sirens and muffled voices. Maya lay strapped down, staring at the ceiling of the ambulance while trying to replay the moment in her mind. The dumpster hadn't just moved, it had rolled downhill at full speed, as though someone had let go of it on a slope. But the alley was flat. Dumpsters didn't move on their own. They certainly didn't gain momentum like a runaway vehicle. Somebody had done something wrong. At the hospital, pain medication blurred her thoughts, but not enough to silence the questions. Doctors confirmed bruised ribs, a sprained shoulder, deep tissue injuries along her back, and a possible hairline fracture in her pelvis. She would need weeks of recovery, maybe more. She would miss work, miss her presentation, miss her income, and worst of all, she felt the world shrink around her with the kind of helplessness she hadn't felt since childhood. Hours later, when she was finally alone in her hospital room, the door creaked open quietly. Maya expected a nurse. Instead, a man in a crisp gray suit stepped inside, a man she didn't recognize. He didn't smile. He didn't introduce himself. He simply said, "Miss Thompson, I represent Metro Waste Disposal Services. Before we proceed, I need to know, are you planning to press charges or file any kind of complaint?" Maya stared at him, heart pounding. pain radiating beneath her bend. The accident wasn't even 12 hours old, and already they wanted to silence her. And that was the moment she knew. She would fight. She would demand justice. She would take them to court. The following days were a blur of pain, appointments, and mounting frustration. Maya's small apartment felt smaller than ever. Boxers of unopened mail stacked in corners. Dishes littered the sink, and the world outside continued as if nothing had happened. She could barely move without wincing. Even the simplest tasks, showering, cooking, climbing, stairs, were battles of endurance. Yet, amid the physical agony, a different kind of pain gnawed at her. The sense that the accident had left her powerless, invisible, and easily dismissed by those responsible. The Metro West representative's visit haunted her. He had been calm, smooth. Accidents happen, he said, almost kindly, as if the dumpster had simply chosen to attack her out of spite. We are prepared to cover medical expenses, Miss Thompson. No lawsuit is necessary. He had handed her a stack of papers and a pen, expecting her signature, expecting her to accept compensation and vanish quietly into the night. Maya had stared at the forms, reading legal jargon she barely understood, her hands shaking not from weakness, but from rage. Cover medical expenses, she thought. They nearly destroyed my life, and they think a few bills will fix it. The nurse, who checked on her later, sensed her turmoil. You're angry, she said softly, placing a comforting hand on Maya's arm. And you have every right to be. Maya nodded. It wasn't just anger. It was a resolve she hadn't felt in years. She wanted accountability. She wanted justice. She wanted to make sure that no other person would ever find themselves lying in a hospital bed because of negligence, because someone decided it was acceptable to let a dumpster roll freely in a narrow alley. Her lawyer, a determined woman named Angela Rivera, entered her life like a whirlwind. Angela had heard about similar cases: industrial accidents, negligence claims, and corporate cover-ups, but she insisted this case was different. We're not just asking for compensation, Maya, she said over the phone during their first consultation. We're going to expose Metro West's safety failures. We're going to make them answer for this publicly. And yes, we'll take them to court if they don't settle fairly. Maya felt a flicker of hope. Finally, someone understood that money alone couldn't erase the trauma, the fear, the weeks spent in pain. The call to action began immediately. Angela requested all accident reports, previous complaints, and maintenance logs for the dumpster that had injured Maya. To their astonishment, Metro Wast's records were patchy: maintenance inspections missed, safety checks ignored, even employee training incomplete. Each revelation deepened Maya's resolve. She realized this wasn't an isolated mistake, it was a pattern, a dangerous, avoidable negligence that had harmed someone, and she was going to make sure the world knew. Recovery was slow. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, forcing her to confront both her injuries and the vulnerability that came with them. But with every step, every ache, she built a quiet strength. She visualized the courtroom, the judge, the jury. She imagined telling her story in her own words, flinching, fearless, and unrelenting. Her friends visited, offering support, meals, and company. Some were skeptical of her decision to fight. It's just a dumpster, Maya. Don't waste her energy, one said. But Maya only smiled, her jaw tight with determination. It's never just a dumpster, she replied. It's accountability. It's safety. It's justice. As the days turned into weeks, Maya's injuries began to heal, but the memory of the accident lingered. She still flinched when she heard the sound of rolling metal. She still had nightmares of the dumpster sliding toward her, crushing everything in its path. Yet, beneath the pain and fear, a new strength emerged, a sense of purpose, a drive to challenge negligence, and a fierce determination to see Metro West answer for its failures in a court of law. Maya wasn't just recovering from her injuries, she was preparing for battle. And the battle was only just beginning. By the time Maya was cleared for limited mobility, Angela had already begun her investigation. She had subpoenaed Metro West's internal records, requested maintenance logs for the dumpster, and tracked down witnesses from the day of the accident. Maya pored over documents with Angela, slowly piecing together a narrative that made her blood boil. It turned out the dumpster that had hit her was far from secure. Maintenance logs were incomplete, inspections hadn't been done in months, and safety protocols had been ignored repeatedly. Previous incidents had been quietly buried or dismissed, leaving a trail of negligence that stretched farther than anyone outside the company could imagine. Angela's team also tracked down the 2 sanitation workers from the alley. One, nervous and timid, admitted he had been distracted by a phone call and failed to secure the dumpster properly. The other, who had panicked at the scene, seemed genuinely remorseful but fearful of his employer's wrath. Maya listened to their testimonies with a strange mixture of anger and empathy. She wasn't looking for personal vengeance. She wanted responsibility. She wanted Metro West to acknowledge that carelessness had real, human consequences. The first depositions were tense. Corporate lawyers tried to minimize the incident, referring to Maya as an unfortunate accident and suggesting that she had somehow contributed to her own injuries. Angela countered every point with precise evidence, quoting safety regulations, past violations, and eyewitness accounts. Maya realized that the fight wasn't just about her writ, was about setting a precedent, showing that corporations could not ignore the human cost of their negligence. Outside the courtroom, the media began to take notice. Local news outlets reported the story, highlighting the unusual nature of the accident: a woman struck by a moving dumpster and the alleged negligence behind it. Social media lit up with discussions, some sympathetic, others dismissive. Maya scrolled through threads cautiously, reminded of the scrutiny that came with public attention. She didn't seek fame, but she understood that public awareness could pressure Metro West to act responsibly. Meanwhile, her body continued to recover slowly. Physical therapy sessions became battles of patience and perseverance. Every step, every stretch, every effort to sit or stand for more than a few minutes reminded her of the accident, but it also strengthened her resolve. She began to journal daily, writing down not only the pain but her strategy, her feelings, and her determination. Each entry ended with a sentence that had become a mantra. "I will not be silenced. I will be heard. I will have justice." Angela advised patience. "Corporate cases move slowly, Maya. They'll try to wear you down. Don't let them." Maya nodded, understanding that this wasn't just a fight for compensation, it was a fight for truth. As the investigation deepened, Maya's confidence grew. Witness accounts aligned with maintenance logs, and gaps in Metro West's records pointed to a larger systemic issue. The company couldn't hide behind accident or unfortunate circumstances. Their negligence was clear, and soon, she and Angela would make sure everyone else saw it too. But the company wasn't taking it lying down. Subtle threats began to surface. Letters from lawyers warning her against speaking publicly. Veiled references to lawsuits if she went too far. Maya's heart raced the first time she read one. Fear wasn't new, but it now mingled with determination. She refused to back down. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for anyone who might be hurt because someone assumed rules didn't apply to them. And as she looked out the window of her apartment one evening, watching the alley where it all began, Maya knew that when the trial came, she would be ready. The dumpster had hit her. Yes, but it would not define her. The day Maya stepped into the courthouse for the first time, she felt a mixture of fear and determination twisting in her stomach. The building loomed above her, like a fortress of justice, marble walls gleaming, polished floors reflecting every hurried step. She clutched her folder of medical records and legal documents tightly, as if their weight alone could give her courage. Angela stayed close, whispering encouragement. Her presence, a steady anchor in the storm of emotions, threatening to overwhelm Maya. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Corporate attorneys representing Metro West were already seated at the front. Crispsuits.com, expressions, eyes cold and calculating. The judge, an older woman with a reputation for fairness, called the session to order. Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself that this wasn't just about proving what happened, it was about making her voice heard, about standing tall when so many would have quietly accepted the settlement and moved on. Opening statements set the tone. Metro West's lawyers spoke first. Their words polished, carefully chosen. They called the incident regrettable, unforeseen, and isolated. painting it as a freak accident rather than the result of negligence. Maya listened, her jaw tightening. Every word, every phrase felt like a slap, as if the company was trying to erase not just the accident, but the very person she had become in its aftermath. When Angela began her opening statement, the courtroom shifted. Her voice was firm, steady, and unflinching. She spoke of Maya's injuries, the incomplete safety protocols, and the repeated negligence documented in Metro West's records. She described the emotional toll, the sleepless nights, the constant fear that had become part of Maya's daily life. The jury leaned in, their attention fixed, as Angela painted a picture of a corporation more concerned with saving money than protecting human lives. Witnesses were called one by one. The sanitation workers recounted their experiences, their hesitation and fear giving weight to Maya's claims. Medical experts explained the extent of her injuries, demonstrating with fluorescent charts how serious the impact had been. Maya's friends testified, describing the transformation they had witnessed, how a once active, independent woman had been forced to adapt to a body and life suddenly constrained by pain. As the evidence mounted, Metro West's attorneys became increasingly defensive. They questioned every detail, suggested exaggeration, and attempted to sow doubt, but Maya remained calm, her resolve growing stronger with every word spoken. Angela guided her through cross-examinations, preparing her for difficult questions and making sure she stayed composed. Each question answered, each point clarified, was a small victory. Outside the courtroom, media coverage intensified. Local news reported on the trial's progress, showing images of Maya in physical therapy. Documents sprawled across tables, and the alley where the accident had occurred. Social media buzzed with reactions. Some skeptical, some supportive, but the public's attention added pressure to Metro West's legal team, highlighting that negligence could not hide behind corporate walls forever. By the end of the first week, it was clear. This battle was not just legal. It was personal. Maya felt the weight of every eye on her, the scrutiny and the stakes of her fight. She had become a symbol of accountability, determination, and courage, and she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. By the second week of the trial, Maya's patience and persistence began to pay off. Angela had managed to uncover internal emails from Metro Waste employees discussing the dumpster in question weeks before the accident. The messages revealed concerns about its stability and the need for repairs, concerns that had been ignored by management. Maya sat in the courtroom, listening as Angela read aloud the emails. The room was silent, save for the soft rustle of papers. The jury's attention was unwavering. The words painted a clear picture. This accident wasn't random, it was preventable. Every neglected warning, every ignored procedure became a mark against the company. A thread connecting the dots from negligence to the chaos in that alley. The dumpster itself became a key piece of evidence. Photographs taken immediately after the accident showed scratches, dents, and poorly maintained wheels. An expert witness examined the images, explaining how the dumpster's condition made it prone to sliding when improperly secured. Had the dumpster been maintained according to protocol, the expert stated firmly, this accident would not have occurred. Maya felt a mix of vindication and anger as she watched the jury absorb the evidence. This wasn't just paperwork or legal jargonita, was proof that her life had been disrupted by preventable negligence. She remembered the moment of impact, the pain, the helplessness. Every detail she had feared might be overlooked was now being acknowledged in court. The deposition of the sanitation workers added depth to the story. One worker, nervous at first, admitted to skipping the final safety check that morning. "I thought it would be fine," he said, voice trembling. "I didn't think anyone would get hurt." Maya's jaw tightened. That casual disregard for human safety had nearly destroyed her life. The other worker revealed the pressure from supervisors to meet strict schedules, often at the expense of safety. "We were told to move quickly," he testified. "Sometimes safety checks took too long, and we'd be reprimanded. I didn't know the dumpster would roll like that. I swear I didn't think anyone would be in the alley at that time." Angela skillfully connected the testimonies to the company's internal policies, highlighting a culture that prioritized efficiency over safety. She made it clear to the jury that Maya's injuries were not a freak accident. They were the result of systemic negligence. Outside the courtroom, The story gained traction online. Local news outlets ran interviews with Maya and Angela, emphasizing the dangerous practices at Metro Waste. Support poured in from people who had experienced similar negligence or who were outraged by the lack of corporate accountability. For the first time since the accident, Maya felt a surge of empowerment. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was challenging a system that allowed carelessness to harm ordinary people. As the trial continued, Maya's determination solidified. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, reinforced her resolve. She knew Metro West would fight back, using every legal maneuver at their disposal. But she also knew that truth, documented and undeniable, was on her side. And with every passing day, she prepared herself for the moment when justice would finally speak. As the trial entered its third week, tensions in the courtroom grew palpable. Metro West's legal team became increasingly aggressive, attempting to discredit witnesses, twist statements, and cast doubt on Maya's account of the accident. They asked questions designed to make her seem exaggerative, focusing on minor inconsistencies in her recollection. Maya felt her heart pound with every pointed question. The defense attorneys leaned forward, pens in hand, eyes sharp and probing. She could sense their strategy. They wanted to make her look unreliable. But Angela had prepared her well. Every practice session, every simulated cross-examination, every meticulous review of her own account had strengthened Maya's confidence. "I understand," she said calmly during one particularly tense moment, "that you are trying to defend your company, but the facts remain. I was hit by a dumpster that was negligently maintained, and I suffered serious injuries because of it." Her voice, though steady, carried the weight of pain, frustration, and determination. The judge nodded, recognizing the honesty in her words. The jury watched intently. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, reinforced Maya's narrative. Medical records detailed the physical trauma: fractured ribs, a bruised pelvis, and soft tissue injuries that required weeks of physical therapy. Photos of her injuries, along with video footage from the alley's security camera, left little room for doubt. During a recess, Maya sat quietly with Angela, reflecting on the progress they had made. "They're trying to wear you down," Angela said softly. "It's their tactic. But you've been strong, precise, and credible. Don't let them shake that." Maya nodded, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Nights were the hardest, as flashbacks to the accident invaded her sleep. The alley, the dumpster, the sharp impact, they all replayed vividly in her mind. Yet, she channeled that trauma into determination. She refused to let fear or pain silence her. Meanwhile, Metro West tried another tactic. They introduced an independent safety consultant, someone who claimed that the accident could have happened to anyone, regardless of maintenance. His testimony was designed to diffuse responsibility, to suggest that the dumpster incident was a fluke rather than negligence. Angela countered decisively. She brought out internal emails and previous incident reports, exposing a pattern of negligence and disregard for safety protocols. The contrast was stark. While the company tried to downplay the incident, the evidence painted a very different picture: a corporate culture that prioritized speed and cost-cutting over human safety. Outside the courtroom, public support continued to grow. News stories highlighted Maya's courage, sharing her journey and her struggle for accountability. Social media users rallied behind her, demanding justice and transparency. The attention added pressure to Metro Waste, signaling that the company could not simply dismiss the case quietly. By the end of the week, Maya felt a mixture of fatigue and resolve. The battle was far from over, but each day in court strengthened her voice and solidified her determination. She knew the company would not surrender easily, but neither would she. Maya was no longer just a victim, she had become a force demanding accountability. The following week brought a new challenge. Metro West, frustrated by the mounting evidence and growing public scrutiny, intensified their corporate pressure. Maya began receiving subtle messages, letters from attorneys warning her against public statements, insinuations that she might face legal repercussions for defaming the company, and even calls from unknown numbers with vague threats. At first, fear surged through her. Every time her phone rang, her heart would skip a beat. But Angela was unwavering. "They're trying to intimidate you," she said firmly. It's standard procedure in cases like this. Don't let them distract you from the truth. You are not the one in the wrong. Maya reminded herself of the alley, the impact, and the weeks of pain. That memory strengthened her resolve. She refused to back down, knowing that yielding to intimidation would allow negligence to continue unchecked. The courtroom itself became a stage for tension. Metro West's lawyers attempted to introduce unrelated incidents, trying to suggest that Maya had a history of exaggerating injuries or filing complaints. Angela countered each attempt with calm precision, focusing the jury on the facts: the dumpster, the ignored maintenance logs, the preventable accident. Meanwhile, Maya's physical recovery progressed slowly. Physical therapy was grueling, and some days her injuries made even standing feel impossible. But she arrived in court each morning, pushing through pain, determined not to let the company exploit her vulnerability. The media coverage continued, drawing attention to both the legal battle and the tactics used by Metro West to intimidate Maya. News stories painted a picture of a woman standing firm against a powerful corporation, capturing public support and shining a spotlight on corporate accountability. During one particularly heated session, a Metro West attorney suggested that Maya's injuries were exaggerated for financial gain. The courtroom fell silent as Angela responded with a calm yet scathing rebuttal. Ms. Thompson's injuries are documented, her suffering verified by medical professionals, and her recovery painstakingly recorded. Attempts to undermine her credibility do not erase the negligence that caused her harm. Maya watched the jury closely. They seemed engaged, attentive, and visibly moved by the evidence. She realized that the more the company tried to intimidate her, the more determined she became. Each challenge became a reminder that this case was bigger than herself. It was about accountability, safety, and holding powerful entities responsible for their actions. Outside the courtroom, Maya's support network grew. Friends and community members rallied behind her, offering both emotional and practical assistance. Their presence reminded her that she was not alone and that her fight had resonance far beyond the courtroom walls. By the end of the week, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. Metro West's intimidation tactics had failed to shake her. If anything, they strengthened her determination to see justice served. The battle was far from over, but Maya had already proven that she would not be silenced. As the trial entered its fourth week, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. This phase would focus on expert testimonies, professionals brought in to analyze the incident, the dumpster, and the company's safety practices. Maya knew these experts could make or break the case, and she felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on her shoulders. The first expert was an industrial safety engineer. She examined the dumpster, its design, and the maintenance logs provided by Metro West. This dumpster was improperly maintained, she stated, pointing to photos of rusted wheels, damaged hinges, and missing safety locks. Any reasonably careful company would have identified these risks and corrected them. Failure to do so constitutes negligence. Maya listened intently, her heart racing as each word confirmed what she had feared and suspected. She was not imagining things. The company's failure was documented, undeniable, and, as the expert emphasized, entirely preventable. The second expert was a medical specialist, a trauma surgeon familiar with industrial accidents. He explained the severity of Maya's injuries: fractured ribs, a bruised pelvis, and soft tissue damage along her back. The impact she suffered could have been fatal, he said. Immediate medical attention was crucial. Delayed treatment or neglect could have led to permanent disability. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine, remembering the moments after the accident, the pain, and the helplessness. Metro West's lawyers attempted to undermine the expert witnesses, questioning their qualifications and suggesting bias. But Angela had anticipated this. Each expert's credentials were meticulously documented, their findings corroborated by independent studies and industry standards. The company's attempts to discredit them faltered in the face of clear evidence. During a break, Maya spoke quietly with Angela. "I didn't realize how dangerous that dumpster really was," she admitted, a mix of fear and determination in her voice. "I thought it was just an accident. Just bad luck." Angela squeezed her hand. "It wasn't luck. It was negligence. And now the truth is coming out." The courtroom also heard from an ergonomics consultant who discussed how the design and placement of dumpsters on narrow urban streets could create hazards if not properly maintained. The consultant demonstrated, with diagrams and models, how a small lapse in protocol could lead to a runaway dumpster, just as it had in Maya's case. By the end of the day, the jury had been presented with a compelling, multi-layered argument. Every expert had painted a consistent picture. Maya's injuries were real, significant, and directly caused by the company's negligence. As Maya left the courtroom, she felt a mix of exhaustion and quiet triumph. Each testimony brought her closer to justice. Each piece of evidence built a narrative impossible to ignore. She knew Metro West would fight to the end. But for the first time, she truly believed that the truth was on her side. The battle was far from over, but now Maya's voice was amplified by science, expertise, and undeniable facts. The courtroom grew still as Maya was called to the stand. This was the moment she had both dreaded and anticipated, a moment to tell her story firsthand. Every eye was on her. The jury, the judge, the corporate attorneys, even the reporters, sitting quietly in the back. Her heart pounded, but beneath the fear was a fierce determination. She would speak her truth, and she would not be silenced. Angela gave her a reassuring nod. Just tell what happened, Maya. Step by step, the truth will speak for itself. Maya took a deep breath. I remember the moment the dumpster hit me, she began, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. She described the rumble of metal on concrete, the sudden impact, and the pain that stole her breath. She spoke of the helplessness she felt, lying in the alley, unable to move, unsure if she would survive. Tears came, but she didn't stop. She spoke of the weeks that followed, the hospital visits, the pain, the physical therapy, and the frustration of trying to return to normal life while still healing. She described the anxiety, the fear, and the emotional toll, painting a vivid picture of the human cost of negligence. Metro West's lawyers attempted to interrupt, questioning details and suggesting exaggeration. Maya held her ground, guided by Angela's calm presence. This is my life, she said firmly. This is not exaggeration. This is reality. The jury listened intently. Some leaned forward, eyes fixed on Maya. Others scribbled notes, clearly affected by the story unfolding before them. Her words humanized the abstract evidence, the logs, the reports, the photos. For the first time, the jury didn't just see a corporate case. They saw a real person, a real life, disrupted by preventable negligence. Medical records and photographs corroborated her testimony, adding visual weight to her words. She showed the bruises, the x-rays, and the notes from her doctors, ensuring that the impact of the accident was undeniable. Every grimace, every detail of pain, reminded the jury that this was more than an accident. It was a preventable disaster. Maya's friends and family, seated in the gallery, quietly wept. They had watched her struggle, had seen her rise from pain to courage, and now they witnessed her courage in action. Her emotional testimony left a mark not just on the courtroom, but on the public record as well. By the time she stepped down from the stand, Maya felt both drained and empowered. She had faced the fear, recounted her trauma, and delivered her truth. She had shown the world and Metro West that she would not be intimidated, silenced, or ignored. Angela smiled proudly. You did it, she whispered. You've made them see the human side of this case. That's what will make them accountable. Maya nodded. Her injuries had started this journey, but her voice and her determination would carry it to the end. The day after Maya's emotional testimony, Metro West's legal team returned to the courtroom with renewed vigor. They were determined to cast doubt, to shake the jury's perception, and to minimize the impact of Maya's story. The atmosphere was tense, heavy with unspoken confrontation. The defense began by calling a series of witnesses, other sanitation workers, company supervisors, and even contractors who handled maintenance. Their statements were carefully scripted, emphasizing the rare nature of accidents, the company's standard procedures, and the supposed unpredictability of rolling dumpsters. Their goal was clear: to frame Maya's accident as an unfortunate anomaly rather than negligence. Angela, remained unshaken. She anticipated each argument, countering with detailed records, photographs, and prior complaints. "This is not an isolated incident," she told the court during cross-examination. "There's a documented history of negligence and incomplete maintenance. Ms. Thompson's injuries are the direct result of repeated oversight and systemic failure." The courtroom became a battlefield of facts versus spin. The defense attorneys attempted to portray Maya as reckless, suggesting she had wandered into a hazardous area or failed to notice warning signs. Maya's heart raced as they questioned her actions, but Angela's firm guidance helped her stay composed. Each careful response reinforced her credibility and kept the jury aligned with the truth. One particularly tense moment came when the defense tried to introduce a report suggesting that the dumpster's wheels were in acceptable condition. Angela immediately countered, presenting photographs of rusted, damaged components and expert testimony showing how acceptable condition in internal reports did not meet safety standards. The jury nodded, visibly impressed by the clarity and thoroughness of Angela's presentation. Outside the courtroom, media coverage picked up on the high-stakes confrontation. Local news highlighted Maya's bravery, describing her as a woman standing up to a powerful corporation. Social media buzzed with discussions of accountability, corporate responsibility, and the courage it took to face such a formidable opponent. Despite the stress and the long days, Maya continued her physical therapy, determined not to let her injuries define her or slow her down. She was often exhausted, but she reminded herself that every session, every step forward, was a small victory, proof that she was reclaiming control over her life and body. By the end of the week, it was clear that Metro Wast's strategy was faltering. The evidence was strong, the expert testimonies compelling, and Maya's own account resonant and convincing. Yet Angela warned her that corporate attorneys rarely gave up, and the fight was far from over. Maya nodded, steeling herself for the next round. The company had tried to intimidate her, to downplay her experience, to question her credibility, but she had survived every challenge so far, and she was ready for whatever came next. The battle for justice was intensifying, and Maya was determined to see it through to the end. As the trial stretched into its fifth week, Maya noticed a shift in the courtroom atmosphere. The jury, once attentive but neutral, now seemed engaged, responsive, and visibly moved by the evidence presented. Public opinion, fueled by news coverage and social media, began to weigh on Metro West's attorneys. The pressure was subtle but undeniable. Their calm composure occasionally faltered under scrutiny. Outside the courthouse, Maya and Angela were approached by journalists eager to document her story. They asked about her injuries, her recovery, and her motivation for pursuing justice. Maya spoke openly, emphasizing not only her own experience, but the importance of corporate accountability. "This isn't just about me," she said during an interview. "It's about preventing accidents like this from happening to anyone else. Companies have a responsibility to protect the public, and when they fail, someone must be held accountable." The attention intensified the stakes. Metro West began sending internal memos, warning employees about media exposure and advising staff to remain neutral on social media. Maya was aware that the company was watching her every move, yet she refused to let fear dictate her actions. She continued to share her story publicly, aware that awareness could be a powerful tool in holding the corporation accountable. Inside the courtroom, evidence continued to pile up. Emails, internal memos, and witness testimonies reinforced a pattern of negligence. Each new piece painted Metro West, not as an isolated offender, but as a company that consistently ignored safety warnings, prioritized speed over caution, and endangered lives in the process. During a particularly emotional session, a co-worker of one of the sanitation workers testified about the company's pressure to complete routes quickly, sometimes at the expense of safety protocols. "We were always told to prioritize speed," the witness said, voice shaking. "Checking every dumpster properly would slow us down, and we were reprimanded for delays. I feared accidents, but I was afraid of losing my job if I spoke up." Maya felt a surge of validation. These testimonies weren't just about facts. They were about human lives, choices, and consequences. They demonstrated that the accident was not a fluke, it was the inevitable result of systemic negligence. Angela summarized the impact for the jury, stressing the ripple effects of corporate indifference. Maya's life had been upended, her health compromised, and her livelihood affected. Yet the company continued to dismiss responsibility. The jury seemed to absorb the gravity of the situation. Understanding that Maya's pursuit of justice represented more than compensation, it represented accountability, safety, and the principle that no one is above the law. By the end of the week, Maya felt a renewed sense of determination. The fight had become bigger than her own pain. It was now a symbol of responsibility, advocacy, and courage. Metro West could attempt to intimidate, deflect, and spin their narrative, but Maya had the truth, and the truth was powerful. She left the courthouse that day, resolute. The road ahead remained challenging, but she was ready. After weeks of intense courtroom proceedings, Metro West's legal team approached Angela with a proposal for settlement. The company claimed it was an effort to resolve the matter amicably and avoid further public scrutiny. Maya, exhausted yet steadfast, listened carefully as Angela outlined the terms. The offer included a sum intended to cover medical expenses, lost wages, and some additional compensation. But Maya's instincts told her this was not enough. She knew that accepting it would prevent the full story from being told and allow the company to quietly move on without admitting responsibility. Angela whispered, "Remember, Maya, the settlement is tempting because it seems immediate, but it doesn't hold them accountable. You've already built a case that exposes negligence. They're afraid of what comes next." Maya nodded. She thought about the months of pain, the physical therapy, the fear she had endured. She thought about the dumpster, the alley, and the preventable nature of the accident. Accepting a settlement now felt like erasing all of that struggle. "I can't take it," she said quietly but firmly. "I didn't go through this to get a check. I went through this to make sure no one else has to suffer like I did." Angela smiled proudly. "Then we continue. You've already proven that they can't hide behind corporate walls. The court will see the truth, and your story will be heard." Metro West's attorneys, realizing that Maya would not settle quietly, returned to the courtroom with renewed determination. Their strategy shifted. They aimed to delay proceedings, introduce procedural objections, and attempt to diminish the emotional impact of Maya's testimony. Yet each maneuver was met with Angela's preparation, thorough evidence, and the jury's growing awareness of the company's negligence. Throughout the negotiations and courtroom sessions, Maya's public support continued to strengthen. Social media users and news outlets highlighted her courage and refusal to accept a superficial settlement. She became a symbol of accountability, inspiring others to speak out against corporate negligence. Even with the mounting pressure, Maya remained composed in court. She testified again, recounting her daily struggles, the anxiety of recovery, and the lasting impact on her personal and professional life. The jury witnessed not only the physical pain she endured but also the emotional resilience that had carried her through the ordeal. By the end of the week, it was clear Metro West could no longer control the narrative. Their attempts to minimize the incident, intimidate Maya, or force a quick settlement had failed. The court and the public had seen the truth. Maya left the courthouse that day with a mix of exhaustion and quiet triumph. The fight had not ended, but she had already won something far more important: recognition of her suffering and the power to demand justice. The trial moved into its final stages. After weeks of testimony, evidence, and expert analysis, the case was handed to the jury for deliberation. Maya sat in the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the jurors as the judge gave instructions. Every second felt like an eternity. Angela leaned in, whispering, "They've seen the evidence, Maya. They understand what happened. Now, we wait." The jury retired to a small room to review the case, their discussions tense and methodical. Outside, Maya and Angela paced quietly, reflecting on the long months of preparation, pain, and resilience that had brought them to this moment. The air was thick with anticipation, and even small sounds the shuffle of papers. The hum of the air conditioning felt magnified in the silence of the courthouse. Maya thought about the dumpster, the alley, in the impact that had changed her life. She thought about her injuries, the recovery, and the emotional toll she had endured. Every step of the journey had been a struggle, yet every step had also strengthened her determination. Hours passed, the jurors emerged, their expressions serious but attentive. The judge asked if they had reached a verdict. One by one, the foreperson read the findings. The jury found Metro Waste negligent. They acknowledged that the company had failed to maintain the dumpster properly, ignored safety protocols, and created conditions that directly led to Maya's injuries. The decision was unanimous, leaving no room for doubt. A wave of relief washed over Maya. She had fought through fear, pain, and intimidation, and justice had been served. The company's attempts to minimize the incident, deflect responsibility, and intimidate her had failed. Angela smiled proudly. "You did it, Maya. You stood your ground, and the truth prevailed." Maya nodded, tears welling in her eyes. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a statement. Accountability mattered. Negligence had consequences, and one woman's courage could challenge even the most powerful corporations. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered, eager to document the outcome. Maya spoke briefly, emphasizing the importance of safety and responsibility. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about making sure companies cannot ignore the risks they create. People's lives matter." The verdict made headlines, drawing attention to corporate responsibility and the importance of vigilance in workplace safety. Maya's story inspired others to speak out, demonstrating that even in the face of powerful opposition, truth and justice could prevail. For the first time since the accident, Maya felt a sense of closure. The road had been long and difficult, but she had achieved what she had set out to do. Justice had been served. With the verdict in her favor, Maya faced the challenge of rebuilding her life. The months of pain, recovery, and courtroom battles had taken a toll. But the sense of triumph brought a renewed energy. She returned to her apartment, looking at the familiar walls and alley below, with a mix of reflection and determination. The physical scars from the accident were fading, but the experience had left deeper impressions, less visible but far more enduring. Maya recognized the strength she had discovered within herself, the resilience she had developed while facing fear, pain, and intimidation. Each therapy session, each court appearance, had been a step toward reclaiming her power. Angela continued to guide her through the legal aftermath, ensuring that Metro West complied with the verdict. The company agreed to pay compensation for medical expenses, lost wages, and additional damages. They also implemented safety measures to prevent future accidents. A direct result of the trial's public attention, Maya became an advocate for workplace safety and corporate accountability. She shared her story in interviews, community talks, and social media posts, hoping to inspire others to stand up against negligence. Her experience showed that courage, persistence, and truth could challenge even the most entrenched systems. Friends and family celebrated her victory, recognizing the months of struggle she had endured. They reminded her that her fight had not only brought justice for herself, but had also made a broader impact, holding a powerful corporation accountable and shining a light on unsafe practices. Late at night, Maya often reflected on the accident. She thought about the fear, the pain, and the uncertainty of those first moments in the alley. But she also thought about the growth, the determination, and the ultimate triumph that had followed. She realized that while the dumpster had altered the course of her life, it had also revealed her inner strength. Maya knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but the lessons she had learned would guide her. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting in spite of it. Justice was not simply a legal outcome, it was the affirmation of truth, accountability, and human dignity. As she looked toward the future, Maya felt empowered. She had faced the unimaginable, demanded justice, and emerged stronger. The battle had been arduous, but in the end, she had reclaimed her life and made a lasting impact. The courtroom had emptied, the echoes of the trial fading into history, but the impact of Maya's journey remained vivid. She stood outside the courthouse one last time, inhaling deeply, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs. The months of pain, struggle, and perseverance had led to this moment. She had not only won her case, but had also changed the conversation about corporate responsibility and safety. Metro West had complied with the jury's verdict, paying the full compensation and implementing mandatory safety protocols for all equipment and employees. The company issued a public statement acknowledging the negligence and committing to prevent similar accidents in the future. For Maya, this acknowledgement, while symbolic, represented a measure of justice and a tangible step toward preventing harm to others. Friends, family, and supporters gathered around her, celebrating the hard-won victory. Their pride was palpable, but Maya felt something deeper than celebration. It was a quiet, steady confidence born from surviving trauma, confronting fear, and demanding accountability. She had found her voice, and with it, a purpose beyond her personal struggle. Maya continued her advocacy work, speaking at community centers, schools, and industry conferences. She shared her story not to dwell on the past, but to empower others, emphasizing that standing up for safety, fairness, and human dignity was never a weakness, but a strength. Her journey became a beacon, showing that ordinary individuals could challenge even powerful corporations when armed with truth, courage, and persistence. Physically, Maya's injuries healed over time, though she remained mindful of her body and the limits it had endured. She integrated her recovery into her daily life, treating every step forward as a testament to her resilience. Emotionally, she carried the lessons of the trial with her. That fear could be faced, injustice could be challenged, and perseverance could turn adversity into strength. As Maya walked down the alley where the accident had occurred, now quiet and empty, she paused. The dumpster was gone, the shadows lifted, and the fear that had once gripped her had been replaced by resolve. She had faced the impossible, demanded justice, and prevailed. Maya's story was no longer just about an accident. It was a story of courage, accountability, and triumph. It was proof that even when life strikes with unexpected force, one could rise, reclaim control, and inspire change. And as she walked away from the alley, shoulders squared, head held high, Maya knew that her life, once altered by negligence, was now defined by strength, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Her journey had ended in victory, but her voice and the change it inspired would resonate far beyond the courtroom walls. The end.